You need
Glad that
Got 2 minutes. Come on.
my watch says 5 o'clock. Yep,
Okay.
5 o'clock.
Yeah, we can run through
So,
it.
I would like to call this meeting of the Patricia A. Hannaford Regional Technical School District to order. It's Thursday, May 18th, 2023. For my watch, it's 5 o'clock. I'd like to start with introductions, so I'll start with those online to be different tonight, and I'm going to start with Judd.
Hi, John Markowski, President of Bridport and WIB member.
Tricia?
Muted?
Muted. Oh,
My spacebar trick didn't work initially. Trisha Allen, rep from ACSD.
William?
William Biederman, Middlebury, Vermont. Sorry.
Workforce Investment Board.
Yes.
Steve?
Steve Lee from Starksville, representing MAUSD.
And Linda, you're on?
Yes, I'm here. Thank you.
Thank you. And then in the room, we'll start with Nick.
Nick Colston from Shoreham, representing ACSD.
Kim Farnham from New Haven, representing my Abraham School District as a community large member.
Steve Orzak, Middlebury resident, representing ACSD.
Suzanne Buck, post-secondary ed workforce training.
I'm Christina Macklin from North Ferrisburg, and I'm the Addison Northwest School District rep.
Dan Rossignol from Addison Northwest
At large.
at large.
Tiffany Love from Middlebury, representing Workforce Investment Board.
And then administrators, we'll start with.
Tim Williams, interim superintendent director.
Jay Stetzel, assistant director.
Patrice Alexander, administrative assistant.
Thank you. Do we have any community online?
Brenda Logie.
Okay. May I have a motion to approve the agenda, please?
So moved.
Then moved
Second.
and seconded. Is there any discussion on the agenda? Hearing none, we'll proceed to vote. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion's passed. Brenda, you are our one and only public. Would you like to say something, or are you just here to listen?
No hand.
No hand raised? Okay, we'll continue on then. Since we have approved the agenda, I'm presuming then that everyone's okay with the minutes of April 20th. Nick, can you read the monthly accounts?
Yes, I can. So this is for April. The energy project, $1,175. General fund, $126,178. Adult education, $243. Enterprise revolving fund, $8,228. Student activities, $672. And payroll, 2 payrolls, for $119,844.
Thank you. Next on the agenda is accept recommendation for oil tank removal. Is that you?
Yeah, Rick, yeah, I'll take over for that. Out of facilities committee was recommended to go with this vendor to remove the oil tanks. There are 2 proposals, and this is the one that the committee is recommending.
Do they know if they're leaks or are they intact tanks?
Don't know yet. I don't know yet. I don't think they've
Maybe
been dug
over
up.
there.
Yeah,
Once they
it has
start
to be
pulling
pulled
them,
up.
then they.
Yeah.
Yeah. They're not suspected to be leaking.
No. Those tanks have been there for a while.
Yeah.
This has been discussed.
And they've been empty.
They've been empty for quite a while, since the cats.
could
And John also said that they were double wall versions, so they're not the old single wall version.
Okay.
Yeah, we're not anticipating problem. Good. Yeah, that's real good.
May I have a motion to accept the,
So move.
Judd moved,
Second,
seconded by Steve Rooney. Is there any discussion on the motion to approve the recommendation for oil tank removal? Seeing no hands raised, we'll proceed to vote. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion's passed. Next is accept community donations of $11,827 for Skills USA competition.
Yeah, the Skills USA folks have been working hard, generating donations to fund the trip, Skills USA trip to nationals in June. And their goal was $10,000. They've exceeded that goal. And the extra money will be set aside for future years going to nationals. Based on the success this year, I anticipate that that will be a good issue in future years. So it's, the Career Center made a splash in its foray back into Skills USA, and it's really nice to see. So I'd strongly recommend you accept these donations, and I don't know why you wouldn't.
Twist our arm, would you?
Yeah.
Who's gonna get to write all these thank you notes?
The folks who are
Yeah.
in Skills USA.
Okay, all right, just wanted to ask that question. May
Yeah,
I?
Along that line, is there gonna be a post somewhere of all these, a lot of these are locals, I noticed, like Stone, G Stone. Is there gonna put up something for, at least for the local stores, would be nice. I know like Habitat posts who funds a house. I don't know where you do that, but it's great. I mean, they're looking, you know, it won't hurt them to have a little advertising and a little bit of return. Yeah.
Yes.
Trish and then Steve.
Yeah, I had a question. Great. I'm all for accepting the donations. I know, who was it? Cram also was able to move on to a national, but it wasn't through Skills USA. It was through the health,
Yeah.
the health program. How do things stand as far as her being able to go, and would any of this money transfer over to her need as well?
She has decided not to go.
Oh.
So it happens once in a while. We've had Skills USA people in the past decide not to go. And the reasons could be varied. It could be a vacation, or it could be fear of flying. It could be any number of things. I don't know the particular reason in her particular case, but she's not going to be attending. But this money would be for skills. This was raised as a Skills USA kind of a thing.
Thank you, Trish. Steve?
Two thoughts. Would it be possible to approach the Addison Independent, see if they would give us some free advertising space, to see if we could thank people that way? Because I would hope that they would want to do that. But I mean, if it's going to cost us money, I don't see a point in it. But it's pretty public, and I would think they would be interested in doing that. The second question was, yes, this is. It's great that they hit their $10,000. Is it possible for us to get an accounting that says kind of what they spent and then how much is left over? Because we did talk about providing some seed money to them, and it would be nice to know how much seed money they already have when the trip is over, not right now. But.
Well, this is their seed money. We're not providing them money. This is donations that they're receiving.
Yes, but I thought that this was going to try to create a fund that would
we were going to
be an activities fund.
We were going to supply seed money if they were unable to raise the $10,000 that they needed.
Okay.
So we're obviously good there.
Okay.
We have other expenses that I'll talk with you guys at a future time related to Skills USA that we will be funding.
Okay.
With our funds.
Okay.
But for this is for their trip and for their future trips to start, because they had Now they have a year to start building up a war chest.
Mm-hmm.
This time they didn't, and what they did in this short amount of time is nothing short of amazing.
Yeah, oh, yeah.
So, couldn't be more pleased.
I would ask that they, like keep track of what they've spent.
Oh, they
only
have to.
because, so then when they start thinking about next year, they can say, oh, so we know that conference fees are gonna cost us this much. And and down the road, so they know what they're looking
Yeah,
towards.
they can't spend any of the money without itemized receipts. So,
But I want them to put it on a spreadsheet, not just bring out, I mean, that way they know for future what
Okay.
they need.
The estimate of what per person.
Yeah, because, I mean, if they give you the receipts, they aren't gonna remember how much they paid for conference fees.
yeah.
So they'll need to know that, I mean, that would
Is the
help
money
them.
managed through the business office?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it has to-
Yeah, Rebecca said that, that basically it has to come out of a student student activities account, so it has to be accounted for.
Right, all the normal accounting procedures happen regardless of where the money comes from. So,
Right.
So that's all gonna be kosher.
Judd? I see your hand.
I was
up.
just, yes, thank you. I'm responding to Suzanne specifically. Is this somewhere where, as board members, we need to be intervening, or I feel like this is for skills to figure it out? Like, I understand where you're coming from. It would be great for them to do this in a way that helps them with next year's budget, but I just don't know that that's the board's place to come in and make that suggestion. If I'm incorrect, that's fine, but I think that's up to skills in the Career Center.
On that subject, Judd, is there any way we can suggest they take a look at grants for next year and have that be something else that they learn?
Yeah,
Grant writing?
Sure, I'm up for them learning anything. It just seems like the board is having a discussion about how to teach, and I don't know that that's our place.
Point taken, Judd.
I concur.
I'll stay in my own
I
lane.
make a motion to accept the
Thank you, I was just
donations.
gonna ask for that.
That should have happened before all this conversation.
I'll second, yeah, we should have made the motion first, right,
Yeah.
before we start talking about
Trying
it.
So it's been moved and seconded to approve, to accept the community donations of $11,827 for Skills USA competition. Any further discussion? Hearing none, seeing no hands raised, we'll proceed to vote. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion's passed. Convert June 19, 2023 from instructional day to a teacher work day.
Yes, the June 19th is a Monday. Others, our sending partner schools have already made that a non-instructional day. So we're recommending, administration's recommending converting this student day to a teacher work day, which would be helpful for a lot of reasons. One, the primary one, teachers can get out of their classrooms so renovations can happen.
Mm-hmm.
We expect them to be out on the 19th. They need to be out of the rooms on the 19th, the end of the day.
Okay. I was gonna say, how can they have it a work day if you use it?
They're gonna be working hard,
Okay.
getting their stuff out of their room.
All right, just as long as it's by the end of the day.
Yeah.
Okay.
Sorry
Yeah.
about that. I'll make that motion.
Okay.
Second.
Been moved and seconded to approve converting June 19th, 2023 from an instructional day to a teacher work day. Is there any further discussion, questions?
I know that kind of falls at the end of the school calendar, but any way to acknowledge that it is a national holiday at this point, or it's being recognized as a national holiday?
Oh, it is Juneteenth.
Juneteenth.
Oh. Sorry, I hadn't even looked at a calendar.
But sometimes we'll catch it, sometimes we won't. I think it's important to acknowledge it. If we're changing it now from an instructional day to a teacher work day,
I have a question, does that affect how teachers get paid? Like, is there?
Unless you make it a holiday.
right?
And that would be changing the contract.
Right.
Right.
Because it's number of days, and that would be one of their days.
Mm.
And knowing that the work crew really wanted to be able to start Monday, and they're not out of their classrooms yet, I'm not sure that we could do that. Nick,
Just
you're
a
looking confused.
No, I'm just following the conversation.
Okay.
At a distance.
So I feel like that might be limiting for us if it impacts pay and different things at this stage in the game. To acknowledge it as a holiday, will we
Okay.
then have to pay holiday pay? Is that beyond the scope of what we're doing today or allowed to do today? Even though I want to acknowledge it, I realize that there are other impacts.
Correct, because it would mean doing a side letter or something for the contract and then trying to get them out of their rooms
No.
somehow. So, is it, or any other discussion, or folks online? No? Well, we'll proceed to vote on the motion, because you weren't amending it, you were just,
No, I was just
Putting that
bringing it
out.
as a point of discussion and perhaps something we can think about next year or when we set the calendar and that sort of thing.
okay,
So,
thank you. All right, all those in favor of converting June 19th, 2023 from instructional day to a teacher workday, please say aye.
I
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion's passed. We have two policies, 2.1, treatment of students, and policy 2.2, treatment of staff. And these are monitoring policies, so we don't see them all the time, but we see them probably these are about, I think, a yearly policy.
I think it's annual.
So, I'm gonna say they must be you.
Yeah, I wrote these, filled these out weeks ago. Basically, it's just outlining, that we're doing what we're supposed to be doing as far as the treatment of students and treatment of staff. Not very lengthy write-ups, but they're there for your review.
May I have,
The only one comment is you mentioned that somebody who's access to the students' records is named Dan, and it's not me. In the policy, there's about certain levels of access.
Oh,
There was
yeah,
a
it's
name,
not Dan
Dan.
Rosenbaum, no. It's our IT director.
I was looking in there to see if it was listed at the
See,
beginning.
I'm
or
falling
something,
into the
so.
trap of not using last names.
Yeah.
I'm
so,
saying, did I? No, I don't want that.
No,
so in the policies, do we actually, should we use actual real people's name instead of titles?
You're right, we should use
in
title.
board policies, yes, but this is a narrative of how I'm addressing these policies.
Okay, all right,
Yeah,
I just,
yeah. And your comment's gonna come up into play.
when we talk about the policies.
Talk about
Right,
policies
okay.
themselves.
all right, may I have a motion to approve policy 2.1 and policy 2.2?
So moved.
Been moved and seconded to approve policies 2.1, treatment of students, and policy 2.2, treatment of staff. Is there any discussion?
I have a question
Okay.
about the fact that we've got these monitoring policies, and now we're adopting new policy, VSBA policies, and are we gonna not be doing the monitoring policies anymore?
These are the governance.
This is separate from board policy.
Because there are policies that talk about treatment of students
Yeah,
and staff with the VSBA, so
correct, yeah.
we
Yeah.
need to maintain two sets of policies.
Yeah, these are like operations kind of, governance kind of
Yeah.
policies, which is a new concept to me.
Yeah.
I'm not used to that, but and I'm not even sure it's statutorily required. It's just what we've done,
Right.
so I just continue to do it.
I guess, do we need to make sure that the
Yeah,
monitoring
conflict.
policies are in
Conflict.
compliance with
Right.
the VSBA policies we're gonna adopt, statute-wise and everything else? Like, It's a little confusing.
I'm wondering if statute-wise, those would trump.
Yeah, so
Please.
the board policies would trump everything.
The VSBA ones.
If they're ever in conflict.
Okay.
These are more like the superintendent won't do this, that, or the other thing.
Right.
And that's what these are.
Okay,
So
okay.
it's a way to, I guess, to keep tabs on your superintendent, make sure he's doing what he's doing,
Yeah.
I suppose. So it's an odd kind of thing to me, but on one hand, on the other hand, it does make sense.
Okay.
They're called executive limitations in the governance world.
Yeah.
Okay.
And we do it.
Basically, we're governing by telling the superintendent what we don't want him to do and letting him do everything else as he sees fit.
I think that's a good
Or
description.
basically.
Okay, that makes sense. So all these monitoring policies are completely related to the superintendent's duties.
Yeah, because you have one employee.
And this is how the responses to each of these policies is how we
Will not fail to.
kind of evaluate.
Yeah, okay,
Does that make sense?
yes,
Okay.
just wanted to clear
Nick?
that.
But we could change these policies or add to them
Mm.
as a policy governance board, because Tim is our only direct report, so.
Right.
Yeah, I don't know that you need to go through the first read, second read process to
No.
modify these.
No.
I don't think so.
Yeah.
But you know, you bring up a good point. When was the last time we reviewed these policies, honestly?
When we started policy governance,
And that was what, 6, 7 years
6,
ago?
7, 8 years ago.
Oh, it was longer than that probably, guy. It was
No,
probably when
before
the-
your time,
It was
yeah.
probably when,
Well,
You
I mean,
were
you've been
there
on the
too.
longest at 8 years.
I was gonna
so
say it was-
7 or 8 years.
7 or 8 years,
Yeah.
yeah.
I was gonna say it was probably when the Career Center went on its own.
No.
No.
Jason was the chair.
Okay.
Just
Um,
finger up.
But anyway,
I
maybe
see
we
you,
need
William.
to look
But,
at
but
that.
maybe we do need to overhaul these.
We can.
Yeah.
We can
One-
put that on
one
an
day.
agenda item. William?
Yes, so as we go through the process of reviewing and accepting these, are the old policies automatically null and void as we accept the new one? Is that how it works?
So,
We're not at that point
we're
yet.
not.
Yeah.
So these policies aren't the same as the VSBA policies that we'll look at later on. These are two different things.
Two different animals.
What did
No.
Steve say? What was that term again that you said, Steve?
Executive
Executive
limitations.
limitations, policies, basically.
Governance policy.
Yes, yeah.
Okay.
So,
Okay.
And I will explain that, Will, when we get to the first read of draft policies. I'll get to your question.
okay.
Thank you.
So we have a motion on the table to approve policy 2122. Is there any other discussion? Seeing no hands raised online, seeing nobody wanting to say anything in the room, we'll proceed to vote. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion's passed. Board retreat planning. I would like
I
us.
suggest we do an overview of policies.
Well, that's a good idea, but first we should probably think about when we might want to do this. I would really like to give the board the month of July off because we worked through July last
Here, here.
year. And it would also give Dr. McTavish, 30 days or so to get her feet wet before we pull her into a board retreat. But I'm waiting for a response, but she's driving right now, I think, if I'm remembering the timeline. So, I've asked, and we'll see, but I'm thinking August. So if people could put on their thinking caps, and It would probably have to be like that first week of August or even the second week, because the third week we would have a regular board meeting. And this would be, the board retreat would be something outside of the regular board meeting. Okay?
So the first or second week.
Yeah. So check your calendars, think about it. And that's all I wanted to say on that. But Steve, Rooney, good idea. We'll put that on the,
Yeah, and I gotta check, when, MAUSD is doing their board retreat.
Yeah, we're at the end of the month,
at the end of August?
28th.
Okay, wow.
And they will do it in August as well.
Oh.
What do we have for total members?
Excuse
It's a
me?
retreat.
Like a 3 or 4 hours.
For a retreat, we have 11 board members
But it feels.
and then administrative staff.
What do we usually do? Do we grab a place within an hour of where we are and everybody sets up for the day?
Normally, we kind of park somewhere here at the Career Center and we do a meal and we're here, but this summer we will not have access to this building, right? All summer?
Correct.
So if we were to plunk anywhere at the Career Center, it would have to be North Campus. Or if somebody had a pop-up tent, we could park underneath the tent.
You could go to the barn.
You could go to the barn, or if somebody has a really nice place on the lake, we could go hang out at the lake.
If we have less than 8, we could go on my little pontoon boat.
All right, so we'll think of a location and such, and move it
So
from
it's
there.
usually a few hours, right? 3 to 4
Yes,
hours,
it's
yeah.
normally 3 to 4 hours.
Has anybody coached the high school?
They're gonna be residing in the high school.
Okay.
But you might be able to use ACSD.
There might be another board.
208? Or
Oh.
209, I mean?
Yeah, we might be able to decide. Yeah,
You got
okay.
options.
We've got options, we'll find a place. And we'll let you know in advance.
Suzanne, now that you mentioned at the June board meeting, we won't have access to this
Right.
space either.
Yeah.
So we'll have to figure that out.
So
But,
Maybe
that's
we
a
should do it on
good
Zoom.
movement. It's the board reception with Dr. McTavish. She will be here around the 15th, participating with staff. Is that
Yeah,
the
I
best
think-
way to put it?
Yeah. I think she'll arrive in Middlebury sometime around 15th. Then the 19th, 20th, that week, she'll spend time with us.
So I was hoping that on the 22nd, so we meet on the third Thursday, which is the 15th. That's our regular board meeting. So the following Thursday, I was hoping that since she will be in town with the staff, we could come together and do a brief, pull the board together, open the board meeting, introduce Dr. McTavish, close the board meeting, and have a little reception for her. In doing that, I would like if the board would be willing to let me spend a little money to like get a cake and some drinks. Well, non-alcoholic drinks. Sorry, Kim.
I'll have my own minutes.
This is an educational facility.
Mhm.
So, would board members, can you quickly check your calendars and see, could you make the 22nd of June?
It looks like it right now.
Okay.
what time of day were you thinking, Suzanne?
It's up to you guys, but I'm presuming the workday would end, what, at 3? 4?
Yeah, 3.
I mean, we could, if people could make it, we could do like a 4 o'clock early board meeting. And if that's difficult for people, then we could just keep it at 5. People have any thoughts? Judd, how about you? You'd have to probably come in off of a roof earlier than anticipated.
Yeah, so in that regard, it's probably going to work as well or as bad as any other day, so I think just go for it, for
Okay.
me.
June 22nd, you said?
June 22nd.
Okay, yeah, that's.
Trisha? What's your schedule like?
Yeah.
It's a Thursday.
So I work until 4, so I can get there 4-ish at least.
Okay.
I'll be out of town that weekend, but I can be online.
Okay. Steve Rooney,
I'm good.
you're good? Everyone here?
Yeah.
So 4-ish.
No,
Maybe 4:30.
Thursday afternoons for me are getting difficult. So,
Are you golfing?
so later the better. I would say 8 o'clock.
You don't have to answer that.
Or
I know
early
Mary.
morning.
Or early morning? Oh, I thought that was the early round at the
No,
golf
no,
course. No?
This Thursday meeting day is just not going well.
So we'll try 4-ish
I would
and,
go 4:30, meet in the middle.
okay, we'll do
That would
4:30.
give Tricia some time to get here.
So we'll plan 4:30 for the 22nd. And realizing we have some people out of town, some people that are engaged, and some people that
We'll be online.
will be online because of
For a
other
few
reasons.
months.
Yeah,
So this would be a quote-unquote reception for the new super.
yes.
Okay.
And then we'll plan something in the fall that will be bigger, that will invite the community to, okay?
And the venue to be decided.
Yes, it will definitely not be in this building.
And it won't be a place that has alcohol.
Will it be a farewell thank you for Tim as well?
Yeah, what about Tim?
Good point.
We talked about that, I don't want anything.
He told me he didn't want anything,
Come
because
on,
that was what I
Tim.
was planning, and he's like, I don't want anything.
Well, too bad.
Thanks, buddy. Be fair to us.
All right, okay, we'll take this conversation offline,
Yeah, please.
and,
I'm thinking about a marble statue outside.
Yeah.
all right, okay, we digress, we need to keep moving. Thank you all. Acknowledge that we have the first read of draft policies, and we'll try for a second read and adoption in June, and there are a lot of policies here.
20.
Yeah.
So,
work, folks.
Tim and Steve, we'll leave it to you.
I was not at the policy meeting last week because of my daughter's graduation, but the committee went through them, and I think they have some comments for me to incorporate into those policies. But to get to, I think it was Will's question, the general process will be to retire any policies that we have prior to that date. Just retire them, and then wholesale adopt all these. So that's the basic procedure in this particular situation. It's a little unorthodox because normally you don't forklift your policy
Yeah.
handbook like that. Going forward from this point on, when policies need to be revised, there'll be onesie-twosies based on what happens with case law or legislation, that kind of thing. So you should never experience this kind of a thing again, as long as policies are fairly routinely updated, following VSBA's recommendations. Did you want to outline some of the?
Yeah, so we reviewed all 20 policies. We did not read through them, like we didn't read them in committee, but everyone did their homework beforehand and read the policies offline. Because the last 13 policies were a little bit of a mix of required and recommended. These 20 policies were all required. So there are 20 required policies. Some of the questions that we had that we thought we would pass on in this meeting are very minor and more clarification questions. A couple of them had we had some questions that might not necessarily be something directed at you. For example, policy C5 about firearms, and policy C15 about student discipline. There was some possibility that there could be some revision in the statute going through the legislature right now, and that there may be another revision coming from the SBA. So even though we adopt these policies now, we may be reviewing them again when they've been looked at in light of new legislation. So that's kind of the overview, and we can go through these individually. I would suggest that if you do that, we're not going to be able to take time right now. The one on C12 is 10 pages in and of itself. I mean, yes, some of them are paragraph, but some of them are pretty detailed. I'm just going to start with C1 about education records. The committee had a question. There's something in there called will notify, and we just wanted to make sure whenever we see will language, we need to know that it is actually being done, because shall and will are things from the legislature that say you have to do this. Yeah.
Would that, so some of these would need a procedure with them, correct?
Yes,
Yeah,
and that
there's
was
a
the
couple.
question, was how does this notification for this one get done? Because it is kind of prominent in the policy. It says it will notify, and we were hoping that it's something that's either in the student handbook or an invitation that goes out when students come into the Career Center. So it's more about, it's that will be notified how records are handled, their rights to see record, I think it's see records, and this might be the one that has, they have to explicitly agree to release, or it's like, they can explicitly say that they don't want to participate in things like marketing and any data that we, now I don't think we do that. I don't think we release any student information, even disaggregated, for purposes of marketing and that kind of thing, but it's just kind of in place.
Yeah.
So the will notify was just a question of, there it is, do we do it? Okay?
Yeah, we did find a reference in the handbook that related to
Yes.
student records and how they're handled. It was all spelled out in the handbook, so for what it's worth.
So do the students get the handbook still?
Good question.
Like physically
I mean,
get
it's,
it?
We offer copies of it if they want a hard copy, but we share it electronically with everyone initially, and then offer to make copies if they want it.
C5 I've already mentioned about that may change, but it just basically, what are the sanctions when somebody knowingly brings firearms to school? A home study, real simple, just says that if somebody is participating in home study, that we will allow them to use facilities and participate along with. C7, the only question the group had was about a truancy officer. It specifically says it will name a truancy officer, and it doesn't say that. Like some of them in the policy, it says this office is the truancy officer. And I know that in many of the school districts, the SRO is the truancy officer, but we didn't know who that was and if it was currently being designated. So Tim said that it was the assistant director, but we didn't find that in the policy like we had in some other places. So. Pupil privacy C8, it's about that. This is the one that has the marketing, and section 8 is about the opt-out, that you can opt out of any of these things. It also includes physical exams, which I don't think we do. Things like for athletics teams.
Oh, yeah, we don't have.
Right. So it's in there, but I don't think we do that stuff. So.
and that one asks for procedures to be developed.
Yes.
Yeah.
Particular one.
May I ask a question?
Sure.
So, for those that require procedures, did the committee wonder about like where the procedures might be kept or how they're linked to the policies, or?
So it did bring up a couple of questions on a couple of these, because a couple of them seem to have a rather extensive procedural outline in them. The one on hazing, harassment, and bullying, which is the next one, it not only says what it is, but it lays out the 5 procedures that are required to be in there. So, the question came up is, normally when we do policies, we don't include procedures, but there were a handful of them that had extensive lists of procedures in here. The Title IX one on sexual harassment, C12, is another one that has laid out specifically the administrative procedures that you use. So, again, that came up in the policy review. Do we want those in there? Is it required that they be in there? Go ahead, Tim, you were.
It's not required to be in there. In fact, they don't belong in there, and it's not the board's purview. It's administration's purview.
Right.
And we are developing, or I am developing procedures. They won't all be done, administrative guidelines. Some policies don't need administrative guidelines,
Right.
some do.
Right.
And the process of making those.
So what my question is, so say if somebody wanted to see hazing, harassment, and they wanted to know like what the procedure was, what might happen if, say, there's that student, would you link them so that the?
No, they're administrative
Okay.
procedures. However, the example you brought up is the one he's talking about
Right.
that has the stuff in it already. It's already in policy. So that's real clear to
Okay.
everybody. And maybe that's why they do it, because it's such a sensitive kind of a thing, so everybody knows what those procedures are. But administrative guidelines are, by and large, not publicly viewable.
Well, that might be different in Vermont because there's all our procedures in Madison Northwest. On all
It doesn't mean that
policies.
they can't do it if they want to,
What do you mean, keep them private versus public?
that they can make them public if they want to.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's not good practice.
I just made the assumption
Well,
that we were required
As
to
ma- as
have.
ma-
Steve, wait a minute, and then.
Yeah, okay.
Now,
So you're,
Steve,
you're 100% certain about that?
In Vermont,
Yeah.
no,
Okay.
not 100% certain about
I
that.
just,
Steve Rooney,
Yeah, I mean, at Mount Abe, all the procedures are online,
yeah.
as well as the policies. And I'm assuming if we're going to take procedure out of a policy that's recommended by the VSBA, I mean, there should be some system of at least initial monitoring. So obviously you're going to need to modify the policy if you're going to take the procedures out of it. So the policy committee would review that edit. And then you might want to suggest in the policy some maybe annual monitoring of the relationship of the procedure to the policy, which you would want to probably do anyway, just in case there has been any legislative updates or federal regulation changes.
All right, first of all, we've not pulled any procedures out of policy anywhere.
Right.
I see you, Steve.
That hasn't happened. I would never do that from a VSBA recommended policy. And most of the policies say something along the lines of superintendent will develop procedures. Doesn't say superintendent will develop procedures and post with this policy.
Right.
That's fine. I'm just saying that if whatever ends up happening in this relationship, the board, whether through committee or the full board, should monitor how that develops. And monitor the final policy. Just understand what the final policy is, whether it's administrative policy or whether it's policy procedure, administrative procedure, or procedure left, as written in the policy itself.
Steve?
And what I would respond to this is that normally we would have procedures pulled out, but if you think about the 2 policies that we really saw it in, harassment, hazing, and bullying, those are hot button political issues, and the legislature could very well have stepped in and said in the law that you will do it this way. And that's why I would be really hesitant, and I would really want somebody to go talk to the VSBA before we pull anything out of these. If you look at C12, which is coming up, it's long and it has a lot of procedures in there, and sexual harassment and Title IX and all the stuff that's in there. This is not a hot button issue. This has been going on for decades for Title IX, and I'm sure that that's not in there by accident. I'm sure nobody at the VSBA said, "Nah, we'll just do it this way this time." I'm sure there's a good.
No, I think you're absolutely right, and I'm not suggesting we pull it out. I'm just saying, however these get modified in whatever form, that it be monitored by your committee and recommendations made to the full board. And if there's a procedure that gets developed from these policies by the administration, I think the board should at least monitor the initial version of it.
Yeah, and what I'm doing right now is these are questions that I brought up. We have only in 2 places have we recommended that something be changed. We kind of looked through here and said, these all look good. They apply in our situation, except for 2 places that we said we would like this changed, and those are coming up in a little bit. But nowhere have we said we're going to change this from what the VSBA said. Does that clarify?
I'm not asking anybody to change anything.
Okay.
I don't know where that came from.
Oh, okay.
I'm not suggesting we change a thing.
Okay.
I'm just saying that if we're going to develop an administrative policy based on one of these things, whether it's because it shouldn't be it shouldn't be in a policy, it should be an administrative procedure, or whether it's just to develop more procedures to ensure compliance with what's written in C12, that the board at least have an understanding of what the policy, what the procedure is.
So
it's obviously the administration's discretion to develop the procedure, but we should at least understand it.
I'm just looking at C10, and it says the superintendent or his or her designee shall adopt a procedure directing staff, blah, blah, blah. So in this one, it's clearly the superintendent who develops the procedure. And there is a model procedure, apparently.
Yeah, but if you look at number 2, it's titled, I think it's section 2 in there, it lays out the 5 things that have to be in that procedure. So it kind of is like walking through a procedure.
Well, it says, well, the administration has to develop a procedure, and as they're doing that, they have to include these things.
Yeah.
And that's the monitoring role of the committee.
Okay.
Is to then look at the procedure and see if it meets the intention of the policy as written.
I would suggest that we move these pieces back to committee when they can meet with the administration and have a better conversation instead of live. But I understand what everyone's saying, and I'll just throw out ACSD. I sit on that policy committee, and we do policies, and then when a policy says needs a procedure, we just say to the administration, this policy says it needs a procedure, and we just kind of pass it over to them.
Yeah.
And so you don't review
And
them?
we don't.
They're not public?
No, right now they are not public. So, okay. Do you have more?
Whatever the board's pleasure is. I mean, I'm not. This is just what we
I
did.
agree with your recommendation for it to go back to the policy group, because we're not ready to vote on any of this.
Yeah.
But we're not asking for a
This
vote
is
anyway.
This is a first read anyway.
Right.
I mean, this is how the process is supposed to work. We first read, make suggestions, make modifications, and that kind of thing.
Right, and if you really have a problem with something, read it, write down, and then on second read, maybe we can say this one's not ready to adopt. But again, let's be really clear, because these are all required policies. So if we're going to modify them, we should be careful.
May I make a suggestion that if people have questions on a particular policy, that they send the question to Tim, who will then forward it to Steve. So then we stay out of public.
Yeah, and you can send it to Steve and me at the
Okay.
same time, but just not more than that. No more than one board member on that email.
Okay, can we
Keep
move
going.
on? Or,
Yeah.
okay, C11, where it says freedom of expression, that's kind of misleading. It's mostly school-sponsored media, and I don't believe we have a school newspaper. Much of this talks about student journalists and sponsors or faculty advisors that are doing school-sponsored media. I think this is another protective one. We don't have anything like that, but if we ever did, then we would have a policy in place. A C12, it's very long, unless there's a reason to go into this. This is pretty well-trod territory around Title IX and around sexual harassment. It's been pretty thoroughly reviewed. It is 10 pages, but I read through there. I did read the 10 pages. There is nothing surprising in there. There is nothing earth-shattering or new in any of that stuff. So you can do it if you're looking for something to entertain yourself in the evening, but this is not
Or some bedtime reading.
right. There's no earth-shattering stuff going on there. We did have some suggestions to correct the format and some of the mistakes.
Okay, I fixed that. Two of them.
Okay,
Two
good.
of them, right?
Great. Yeah, we just asked that you review and
Yep.
before it goes into the policy manual. C13 is about homelessness and what constitutes homelessness and the requirement that procedures must do this. So again, that was another one about as long as we have procedures in place, we should be fine. C14 is 504s and Americans with that ADA, Americans with Disabilities Act. This is the other one that we were kind of saying it's got a lot of protocol in here. So is that procedures so anyway, let's not reopen that discussion. The only thing that was pretty prominent in this one was that they had the he/she language in there, and some of the committee members, myself included, were wondering if we could change that to the more hip and modern, they and their.
Gender neutral.
Yeah, the gender neutral stuff. But again, that's something that we have expressed before, and I don't think it's a make or break on these. This could be something that we say, let's go back through the policy manual someday and make it more conform to this new way that we do this. Okay? Student discipline, this was the other one. It was mostly around weapons and expulsions, and again, let's adopt this one unless we hear something. If we hear something different, I'm sure the VSBA will say, you've got to revise your C15s and C5s. But what's there now is nothing new and interesting. On to the student policies, PVGRs for D1, again, it just kind of says what what we should do, and pretty sure we do all that. So it wasn't a big lift on that one. Or D3, or the only thing we wanted to say about D4 was, to our knowledge, we are not a Title I school, and we do not. A lot of the Title I stuff doesn't apply to us. That can change on a dime, should something happen around that. But usually Title I applies to the sending schools, so that would fall under the districts that are sending us stuff. So you can look at it, but again, it's probably not going to apply to us. D5 is dissection. We don't do dissection.
Oh, yeah, we do.
Yeah, we do.
Oh, we do?
Yeah, in medical.
Oh, medical.
Yeah, I make sure I don't go in that room when they do.
Sorry.
Sustainable agriculture does.
Oh, sustainable
Yeah,
does
right.
dissection as well. Okay.
You don't like dissection?
Um,
Oh, it's so much fun.
But it's really simple. If a kid doesn't want to do it, they don't have to do it, and they can't be penalized for not doing it. So that's, again, that's not an extensive policy. Class size, at least annually, on compliance, I'm not sure that we have done that.
Oh, yes,
Yes.
we have.
Well, we've done class size
Yeah.
around number.
Typically in September, we get a listing
That's
of
what I
class
thought.
size.
We've done class size
And
when,
Yeah.
we're not always
When
in
there's a
conformity
limit.
with,
Mhm.
that we drop down too many times below it, then
yeah.
it's
Okay.
a different
And the
conversation.
superintendent usually addresses the
Okay.
reasons to maintain.
Okay,
And I think we gave you that
I
stuff.
think you did, yeah.
Yeah,
okay. I just didn't recall it, so my bad.
it's a long time ago.
A lot has happened.
September last year, yeah. Okay.
September of last year.
Classes with the dissection part.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay,
maybe
missed it.
October.
I missed it. D7 is about special education and IDEA compliance. Again, it's a, are you doing this? And I think we are. Okay, on to the ones about, the last three are school communications, or school community relationships. That if E1 is about Title I parents, if we have Title I parents and families, we have to work with them. And the question there was, although we're not a Title I school, I'm pretty sure we do have some Title I students. And are they identified and do we work with them was the question.
It's a good question. I don't think they're identified as such in our student information system.
Yeah, because that might be the sending schools know who they are, but we don't.
Right, we're not, I guess you could argue we have an educational need to know, but we don't really.
Mm-hmm. The only question, I mean, because it says that, I think it's more of a, since Title I is an equity issue, that it puts the burden on the school district to have to reach out to Title I. And I think that might be by family, not by our classification as an educational institution. So I would feel more comfortable if we had a little bit more information on that. So, is it by student or is it by school? If it's by student, are we doing this? Because, as you said, we may not have that information.
What schools have to do when they receive Title I funds, they have to engage parents in the process of disseminating those funds for whatever they do with those funds. So where I worked before, we'd have family nights, engagement nights.
Okay.
And that's the gist of what they're getting at with a policy like
I
this.
see. Okay, so this was about funding. This wasn't necessarily.
It's related to funding, yeah.
Oh, okay, my mistake then. I was confused about that.
No, it's okay.
And that one's
We don't do Title I here.
that one's a tough policy anyways.
Yeah.
On to F, and these are non-instructional operational policies. Number one is about travel. We'll have a travel and reimbursement procedure that is available to faculty, staff, anybody that would be covered by traveling. We do have that. We have had that. Everybody knows about that. So we're in compliance there. F2 brought up an interesting question, that it has to be Title IX and compliant, with all the harassment. And we couldn't identify a mascot that we have. So if we do adopt a mascot, let's be careful about that, but I think this is more of a, we've had issues in the state, and it is another hot button issue. It's there if we need it, but right now we don't need it. Okay.
One could argue our logo is our mascot, maybe? I don't know.
Okay.
Yeah. I don't know about that.
Yeah.
That might be really going out on a limb, Christina.
Yeah, I don't know.
Here's a pretty, safe.
Anybody online have any comments, questions? We didn't put you to sleep, did we?
No, I'm not sleeping at all. I just have a question, and I apologize, I'm not actually trying to be rude. But the policy committee is sitting down and they're kind of discussing everything. Is it possible to get kind of a summary before a meeting so we can sit down and take a look and see what might be the high points of things that we might want to discuss during the board meeting? Does that make sense?
Was it in the minutes or not?
I mean, what we decided was basically that that was kind of our charge, was to do that. But if the rest of the board wants to read them all, there's nothing stopping you from doing that. I mean, they are there and available. So,
Yeah, we look for egregious errors in the way it was laid out and things like that, but for the most part, and clarifications, points of clarification that might be needed.
right.
But we didn't argue against accepting or, saying that this is a non-issue. Like Steve pointed out, some of them are irrelevant to us, but they're still there.
Well, these policies, it's my understanding, they've already been vetted by, what is it, the VSBA?
Yeah, VSBA.
And what we're doing is we're just kind of looking at it and saying, yes, we're going to do these, or no, we're not going to do these? Is that kind of how it works?
Well, we're required to do all of them.
Right.
Right, so we don't really have a choice.
I guess the response is that if this is required by, all these are required by statute somewhere. The VSBA has lawyers that found all this or knows all this, and they created these policies. So I guess the impetus on us is we either do this or we come up with our own policy that meets those requirements. And I don't know that we want to do that because then we would have to have it reviewed by legal counsel and all those sorts of things. And we would possibly be taking a risk that whatever we do doesn't do what the VSBA has already done.
I agree with you completely on that.
Okay.
Yes.
Steve Rooney.
So I think, well, if I understand your point, the synopsis that Steve just gave verbally, if it had been possible somehow to get just those kind of highlights from that discussion, maybe ahead of time or maybe in this second round, because there's going to be a second reading, and maybe that's something to generate after the committee and Tim do a little more further work on it. And then we get kind of a summary, of what the committee came up with on their. And my second point on the VSBA motions is yes, they've all been vetted, by the VSBA and their lawyers, but they're board policy, and if there's something in them that doesn't quite fit our model or doesn't quite fit our circumstances, it's completely up to us to tweak them if necessary. There was a policy that came out in the last minutes about, public complaints about staff. And the way that it was written by the VSBA is basically how a normal public school would work, but that's not our model. So my comment was, we should be talking about, our chain of command, which is slightly different than the schools. And it was, it's a minor thing, but that's the kind of thing that you want to go through these policies for, and just make sure there's not something that just doesn't fit with the way we operate.
Okay. Okay, yeah, and I'd love to, dealing with that's great. I'd love to see stuff that, that doesn't work for us. So,
right.
Just trying to bring it up, sorry.
A couple comments about that. I worked with boards. One board had an attorney on the board and took great pleasure in modifying every policy that came from the SBA.
Very nice.
And which is nice and all for that year. But then when future revisions came from PSBA, it was a nightmare to try to update the policy because he was no longer around. So
I'm not advocating wholesale revisions or anything.
I know, but I don't want anybody to go down that rabbit hole of saying we should modify them to our heart's content, because that may be great fun in the beginning, but it won't be great fun later on.
And if you, if this would be helpful, if our little synopsis, and it might be a little redundant on some of those policies that are one paragraph, but at the next policy meeting, we're going to get the feedback from here and look and see if there was anything else we need to do. If you would like a synopsis, we could spend the policy meeting creating that.
Or you could attend the policy committee meetings.
But what would be best, I think, would be if you just, I know how thorough you guys are. If there's a way to just, hey, this is one we want to flag, that maybe we should bring up and we should talk about and really dive into. And that's kind of what I was looking for, so.
Christina?
Well, I'm just wondering if the policy committee could reflect some of our conversation in our minutes, because we're taking notes and we're discussing these in committee, so there's no reason why we couldn't make notes, and then the policy committee minutes are attached to this agenda, but our discussion was not necessarily included this time, but we could do a better job of that next time.
Yeah, I think that's a totally appropriate method.
That'd be really helpful, thank you.
And again,
Because I'm looking at the policy committee meeting minutes, that are included here, and there's not a lot of comment about that.
Yeah.
yeah, and that was intentional.
Yeah,
I mean,
it was, yeah.
we were not trying to do one of those, and then we talked about, because that
Yeah.
was, we had 20 policies, and we got through them rather efficiently, so.
No, I think you had some good highlights in this discussion here.
Okay, great.
That,
Yeah.
could have been a half a page maybe, and
Sure.
on just the policies you thought you needed to say anything about.
Yeah, and in the future, when the policy committee meets, we're not going to be doing 13 and 20 policies at a time. So it'll be a little bit more manageable in that case. So I think it's a perfectly reasonable suggestion. And yeah, apologize for how much it was this time. It was just, we were trying to handle a lot of policies.
I don't think
We
any
know you had a lot of work.
necessary.
I'm not,
Nick?
not being critical.
No, I found Steve's synopsis very helpful, and I've got the policies, and
Yeah.
I'm good.
I
Christina?
just want to point out, it is incumbent on every board member to make sure you do read the policies through, right?
Yeah.
Not just,
Yeah.
I mean, the policy committee is here to work with Tim and, bring a presentation to each one of you, but everybody should read them through, just to make sure. Because you're going to vote on them eventually. so.
And the
Well, and
only-
it's also one of our primary functions.
Exactly, exactly.
Yeah.
And, for our new board members, policy kind of got away from the board, and so that's why everything is kind of really out of whack. And that's why the wholesale of letting go and putting in new is happening. And then going forward, the typical cycle is to review each policy 3 years, unless the VSBA gives you a new version of it or if they rescind it. And on that one, the only thing I can think of that is just making sure that when policies call out, like they say superintendent, or if they say like assistant superintendent, we'd have to put like assistant director or something like that. We just have to change the terms to match our setting. But there are some policies that come through from VSBA that are required that you can't change anything other than put your name on the top of it and say, good to go. Those are pretty high level ones.
Suzanne, since you do work with the VSBA
Yep.
a lot, could you make a suggestion to them that when they release these policies that they change the language around he, she, so that they say there? Because then that would make it less work for us to have to go through and find all of those.
I can pass that comment
Sure.
along, and I'm just one voice out of, I don't know how many sit on that committee, but I'll
Actually-
pass it along.
But if no one suggested it, it would be helpful to us.
If it said he, she, they.
Or however they want to do it, but he, she is now becoming,
Yeah.
like saying he used to be.
Yeah.
Because everything said he before, so.
Yeah.
Well, and if it's any consolation, there's a total of what, 30 policies, 32 policies?
There's very few.
It comes maybe at least twice that number.
Mm, wow.
Oh, I sit on another policy committee, they told me the other day they had 400.
That's nuts.
That is nuts.
That's nuts. So,
I won't tell you what that one
We'll
was.
take the 30 we got. We'll leave it at that.
So we can build from there if you.
No, we'll stick
less
with.
is usually more.
Yeah. So, any other feedback or thoughts for now. If not, then if you go home and say, man, I reread this and I'm stuck, send it to Tim and Steve O, not Steve R, because Steve R will say, why am I getting this? But do not copy anybody else on the board, please.
And since this was a first read, this does not require a motion, adoption, or
Right.
any voting, so we can be done with it.
Well, I make a motion to, since it is on the action agenda, I make a motion to acknowledge the first read.
Okay, that's fair.
That's fine. Do I have a second on the acknowledgement of the first read? Dan? Does anybody want to add any more discussion to the first read? Seeing no hands raised, we'll proceed to vote. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Did we lose Judd? All right. Motion's passed. On to the informational agenda. We have facilities, budget, policy, superintendent's report, business office report, and the adult ed report. Any questions on any of those or comments? As usual, the superintendent's report is, I don't think there's any minutia unturned.
Oh, I thought I left a lot of stuff out.
Well, then I guess maybe we don't know about it.
It's a good read.
It is good.
Well, you do weekly reports too,
Right.
so.
He does, so.
Yeah, well, yeah, and most of that stuff's just pulled from there.
Sure.
Anything? Okay. So if there's nothing on that, then we have, we've added the second public comment into our agenda, and this is for public to comment on anything outside of the agenda, and or if they heard something that we discussed tonight that they'd like to comment on, they may. Is Brenda still with us, or has she left?
She's still there. But she's not raising her hand.
She's not raising her hand, okay. So we will move on then to policy 4.1, governing style. Who wants to take that on? Okay, I'm going to hand it to someone. How about Tiffany?
Okay, so this is when I rate how well the meeting went and
Yeah.
all that. So, I think we did have some very good discussion tonight, a lot of very good clarifying points for all of us, and, 5 out of 5? Well, 4.5 out of 5.
Great.
And we're only 3 minutes over.
All right.
That's
Super
good timing.
remarkable.
Right?